Hey to my YouTube fam, this your girl Nurse T coming to you with 3 tips that I have to help you nursing school students study while in the nursing program. I am a RN nurse with a BSN degree. I currently work on a oncology hospice med-surg unit. Forgot for a second. But yeah, if this video interests you, just keep on watching. Alright, so let's get into these tips that I want to share. Numero uno, know your learning style. Are you a solo learner or you like to study with groups? That's something you probably want to know ahead of time. That's something that you might have to go through the program and determine after a few semesters or after a couple of classes. Know your learning style. With me, I went through the program and I noticed that I actually studied better by myself. As far as in going through for the first time learning the material, I had to learn it by myself. When it came to the group, then I can go over with the group the stuff that I already knew. So sometimes you have groups that want to study together, but to me, I found that impossible. I found that studying solo worked out for me because I had. So as I shared in my previous video that I worked while in school. If you haven't already seen that CNA to RN video, please check that out. But I worked while I was in school and I had kids. So that means that Nurse T time was very, very valuable. I didn't have time to meet up in a group and gossip about what was going on Empire, what was going on Housewives of Atlanta, all that good juicy stuff. I didn't have time for that. I wanted to know, didn't have time for it. I only had time to know about what's the gold standard test for end-stage renal disease. What's the pathophysiology of Parkinson's or whatever the case may be. I knew that I had to study alone, read up on whatever I need to read up, know my labs, know my symptoms, know my nursing intervention, all that kind of good stuff. What helped me was I worked 3 days. So that means the other 4 were dedicated to school. I had a day of lecture, I had a day of lab, and I had a clinical. So somewhere along that line, I needed a full day to study. So on my day that I didn't have a lab or a clinical, I knew my local library, I knew their schedule from the back of my head. I had a computer at home, but I knew how I focused. I knew that if I was at home, I was going to be stopping, going to the refrigerator, laying down, watching TV, on the phone, and basically my study day would have turned out unsuccessful. So I would actually go to my nearest library and treat it as if I was going to work. When I dropped my kids off at school, I would have my lunch bag with me. I would go to the library. If they open from 8 to 5, I would be in there from 8 to 5. Because after 5 o'clock, that time was dedicated to my kids. So if you have kids and you're in a nursing program, solo might work for you if you're anything like me. Now, don't get me wrong, groups are helpful as well. But like I said, with me, I knew how I focused, and I knew that I had to grasp the information, the content, learn it for myself, and then when I met back up with the group, I studied with we kind of quizzed each other, we made concept maps, we just basically had an open discussion on what we all have learned, and then, it was successful that route for me. Being in a group is great and all, and it's especially good because sometimes you might think a certain way and you didn't think about certain things or whatever regarding that information you should know. You probably didn't think about it, and someone else might in the group probably felt like it was important and thought about it, and that could have been what actually showed up on the test. Numero dos, and I can't stress this enough. If your professor allows you to do this, please do this. Record your lectures. I can tell you it was so helpful for me. It was helpful for me because sometimes when you go to, they tell you to study before you go to school. So therefore, when you're in school, you can be more of an active learner and not a passive learner. You can be more engaged into the instruction as opposed to just sitting back and just being passive and not, going back and forth. And not only that, if you study before the lecture, and when you hearing the instructor present this information to you, you can fill in where you have confusion. But if you don't study before the lecture, you're not going to know what you know versus what you don't know. And it always feels good to go into the lecture prepared, so that if you had questions about certain things, that instructor is there at that moment to fill it in. But having your lectures recorded, you're able to play those back while you're driving, while you're in the grocery store, standing in that long line waiting to check out. You put your earphones on, you can listen. Or like I stated, when I go to the library on that day that I have to study, that free day, I replay those lectures. And guess what? Sometimes I hear stuff on the recorder that I didn't even hear when she was going over the lecture. And I'm like, you know what? I'm glad I recorded that, because sometimes they'll emphasize on stuff that will be on the test. They'll say it at least twice, Or let's say if you have to get up and go to the bathroom or something and you miss out. Recording your lectures can really pay off, and you can always play them. All right, last but not least, numero tres. If your professor gives you a blueprint, please, by all means, fill out that blueprint, because 9 times out of 10, 80% at least of that information on that blueprint will be on your test. It will be to your advantage to fill out that blueprint and know what's on that blueprint, because, like I said, majority of the time, they will put it on that test. And not only with the blueprint, but if you have like stuff like labs or signs and symptoms, stuff like that, make some flashcards along with that. I know I said I'll put in 3 tips, but let's just say this one will go hand in hand with the blueprint. If you're a flashcard learner, put some flashcards, make some flashcards, because when you're learning all those lab values and signs and symptoms, all this stuff that might be on your school students, again, I could have went on and on about the tips. So I'm thinking about pretty much making a series, because there always will be tips that will come to my mind. And I don't want to have about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 videos out there saying nursing school tips. So let's just look at this as a series, because I'm sure I'm going to hit you back with some more. Because whatever your girl Nurse T know, you would know, okay? And so whatever questions you have, as always, drop them down below. Subscribe to my channel. Hit that ding ding notification bell so you can get more from Nurse T. And I'm out.